I think it's fair to say the Yonko commanders are some of the coolest, most badass motherfuckers in all of One Piece. From our boys Zoro and Sanji to the obvious picks of Katakuri and King, the Yonko commanders are just on another level of badassery. However, there are two characters who I believe transcend the level of commander and could probably give some admirals a run for their money. The two strongest, Marco the Phoenix and Flame Emperor Sabo. Now, which one of these badass blonde-haired fire users are really at the top of the commander totem pole? Well, in this video, I'll be ranking these two characters based on Devil Fruit, hockey, and roles in the story. And with that, let's get to it. Starting off with a complete mismatch, let's talk about the two Devil Fruits and their mastery with them. Now, Marco owns easily one of the most broken Devil Fruits in all of One Piece, that being the mythical Tori Tori no Mi model Phoenix. With this, you already know the crazy shit he can do. The man can fly, heal most of his injuries, and move at significantly increased speeds, making him one of the fastest characters in all of One Piece. So with this Devil Fruit, Marco was literally challenging Kizaru in speed, the fastest character in One Piece, able to knock the Admiral away. While this doesn't necessarily mean the two have the same level of strength or even the same level of speed, this simple feat of speed is easily better than anything Sabo's ever shown. Additionally, Marco, mainly only using his Devil Fruit attacks, was able to deal decent damage to Queen and knock back King, holding both the incredibly powerful Yonko commanders back for a significant period of time until Zoro and Sanji could arrive. Okay, he didn't beat King and Queen, but let's be real, I don't think most Yonko commanders or admirals for that matter could actually defeat two top tier Yonko commanders. Now let's talk about the obviously most insane part of Marco's Devil Fruit, the endurance he gets from his fruit's healing factor. Dude, this shit is absolutely insane. With it, he was casually flying through Kizaru's Yasukani no Magatama and was also capable of clashing with the Kainu and Big Mom, two Yonko level characters. I think most people would consider Marco's durability and endurance his two best factors in a fight against Sabo. However, while this fruit does seemingly do it all, it's worthy to note that the firepower of this fruit isn't absolutely insane like everything else. They aren't bad, as he did deal damage to someone as durable as Queen, but if we're really being honest with ourselves, we haven't really seen Marco do anything devastating to someone of the Yonko commander level or higher. This is especially bad as Marco is no slouch with his Devil Fruit, being one of the most experienced mystical Zoan users in the entire series. So for the fact that someone as experienced as Marco still lacks in damage with his fruit is not the greatest thing in the world. In comparison, while Sabo is obviously lacking in experience with his Mera Mera no Mi, the man's got firepower. With just a Fire Fist, he beat Burgess so bad that many people think Burgess isn't even worthy of the Yonko commander level. I really want to emphasize how crazy it is that he's doing this with such little experience, as when we look at a character like Ace, the potential of the Mera Mera no Mi is nearly limitless, so Sabo's potential with his fruit is absolutely unreal. All things considered, firepower is really the only place where Sabo and his Mera Mera no Mi really excel in, and as a mid-tier Logia fruit, it's really hard to put it above Marco and his Phoenix Devil Fruit. So on to hockey, one where I think again, this is a bit of a mismatch. Marco definitely doesn't have bad hockey, as like I said prior, he was capable of damaging Queen, but man, Sabo's hockey is just on another level. I think it's important to note that where Sabo lacks in Devil Fruit mastery, he absolutely makes it up for mastery with his hockey, as for the longest time, that's all he really had to depend on. With his hockey, he easily destroyed Burgess twice, annihilated Bastille, clashed with Fujitora, and won the Mera Mera no Mi from the Dressrosa Coliseum. And speaking of the Coliseum, just by digging his hands into the ground, the man was able to completely destroy the entire Coliseum arena. And if we're being honest, this kind of looks like advanced armament hockey. I'd like to remind everyone that many of these feats were without the Mera Mera no Mi or with little mastery of it, and still he's destroying Yonko commander level characters like Burgess with absolute ease. It does suck, because I don't want to say Marco has bad hockey, because I really don't think he does, but it's clear he's been a little too dependent on his Devil Fruit for the longest time, and just hasn't advanced in hockey to the level of characters like Sabo, and I would also say Zoro, Sanji, and Yamato. This was pretty obvious from the get-go, but Sabo's hockey feats are just way better than Marco's, so let's just give this section to the Flame Emperor and move on. Let's end this tiebreaker with what I consider to be the most decisive section of this video, the two's roles in the story. As the first commander of the strongest man alive's crew and the second in command of the Revolutionary Army, it's pretty clear both Marco and Sabo are supposed to be a cut above the rest in relation to other Yonko commanders. Looking at Marco, in both the wars he took part in, he was an irreplaceable asset, but I think this can mainly be seen in the Battle of Marineford. Like it or not, this guy was an absolute fucking monster during the time of Ace's execution. The guy was fighting on par with admirals and was tanking direct hits from them, but I think what is most important to note is that besides Whitebeard, Marco was easily the strongest strongest person on his side, and considering the opponents they were up against, Whitebeard had to have insane trust in people like Marco and probably Joseph and Vista as well. And in general, I'd say Marco delivered. He protected people from all 3 admirals, and without a surprise attack from Kizaru, none of them were really able to damage the guy. The only person on the Marine side that really damaged Marco directly was Garp, and like, come on dude, it's fucking Garp. If you want to argue that Marco didn't get really good damage on anyone during Marineford, then that's fair, but playing his role as a guardian and a protector, the guy absolutely excelled, protecting someone as weak as pre-time skip Luffy, who in my opinion would have been one-shot by any admiral pretty easily. Now, looking at Sabo's role in the story, holy shit, it's kind of insane. It's pretty clear that the guy to some extent is picking up Ace's legacy, becoming influential enough to be known as a Flame Emperor. Considering Ace's potential, which many argue was at Pirate King levels, it's insane to think about where Sabo will go in this final arc. Even at the current point, the guy at the age of 22 was able to surpass characters like Ivankov, Kuma, and Karasu to become the second in command of the Revolutionary Army. Speaking of Karasu, with just him, Sabo, Morlaix, and Lindbergh, the 4 survived an altercation with Green Bull and Fujitora at the same time. To be fair, it was stated that the 2 admirals couldn't fight at full power due to them being in the Holy Land. Still, just surviving that fight against 2 admirals is absolutely insane. One thing I've argued time and time again, especially when talking about characters like Mihawk and Shanks in comparison to Kaido, I'm of the belief that major characters in the final arc have or will have surpassed their predecessors from previous arcs. Considering that seems Sabo will be a major player in the final arc, and Marco probably won't do anything after Wano, you could argue that Sabo has, or at some point will surpass Marco. And with that, it's really hard to say who's overall stronger between Sabo and Marco, as the 2 really do have comparable showings, especially against admirals. And like I said prior, I genuinely believe both of these characters are most likely reaching that admiral level. Now, if I had to choose between the experienced tank Marco the Phoenix and the high DPS fighter Sabo the Flame Emperor, I'd have to choose, drumroll please, my boy Sabo. Man, this hurts as I genuinely love Marco to the fucking death. And while I do think it's arguable either way, I think it's important to note what Kaido said about Haki being the most important skill for a fighter. Sabo has shown just exceptional levels of armament Haki, being able to absolutely embarrass a Yonko commander level character like Burgess. And while I think Marco would tank the fuck out of a lot of Sabo's attacks, we know for a fact that he would eventually tire himself out, as he did while fighting King and Queen, 2 characters who I don't think hit as hard as Sabo. I just don't think Marco has enough DPS to really take down someone as strong as a Flame Emperor. But let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe, like the video, you all know the vibes. Click over here for a video talking about 2 men that hold the title of World's Strongest. And with that, I will see y'all later.